All right. Good morning, Doug. Wanted to talk to you about the Tucker Carlson situation. It's been a couple days since his termination. Had a little time to think about it. What's your take on what's going on there?
Well, should we be concerned if a media personality is fired or knocked off his high horse? I mean, why is he important? Or why is anybody out in the blogosphere or the electronic world? Why are they important to our personal lives? I mean, why should we really give a damn? Uh, that was my first reaction, and I think it's a correct way to look at these things because I think we're as you can tell just by walking down the street, everybody's on his electronic device. We have lost touch with physical reality and instead are hooked up with what digits are doing on the screen for us and talking heads on the screen. So I don't like that. It's unreal and distorts our views of reality. So, with that premise, uh, or with that preamble, um, Tucker Carlson. Why is he more important than most? I think he actually is, because over the last year or so, certainly, probably more than that, last couple of years, some of his editorials have been just fantastic. I mean, calling out the powers that be and defending concepts of freedom that are not talked about elsewhere. So I've become a fan of Tucker because he's the only one doing this. Uh, and Fox is the only place where it's done. Although, frankly, a lot of the other people on Fox are not in the same class. I mean, like Sean Hannity, he's a
Yeah.
neocon, a drug warrior, horrible. He's a blowhard, horrible person. But uh, Hannity's still there, and Carlson's gone. So we got to ask ourselves, why is Carlson gone? And what's your take on exactly why is he gone? It's too bad that he's gone. He was unique.
He was unique. And I think one of the things that was brought up in this group call we were on earlier this week that I thought was interesting was the fact that so many Democrats actually watched him as well. And there's basically a survey, I think it was published last October, that said that um, a huge portion of the people who identified themselves as Democrats were watchers of Tucker Carlson. So it's not like he played a different role, certainly, than like Sean Hannity does, which is the Lindsey Graham wing of the Republican Party, just exactly what
Yeah,
you'd expect him to say.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think he had more influence on the public debate than anyone else, certainly on Fox and probably anywhere else as well. So I think that puts a bigger target on his back, certainly because he's more influential. But at the same time, it's a terrible business decision. You got to imagine why would it's seems like a big mistake.
yes. Generating a lot of ad revenue uh, and directing a lot of ad revenue to Fox Nation or
Yeah.
whatever the
Subscriptions.
subscription.
Yep. It was launched by him essentially. Without him, I don't think it would have turned into anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's a big deal. And then there's this thing where Fox is being sued by the Dominion voting machine people. And how can they attribute any part of that suit to Tucker? Because uh, being mostly out of the country and watching stuff on the media on my computer, so I watch Carlson's show because he has things on it that you don't get anywhere else. But how did he, in any way, impugn the reputation of Dominion? I never heard him do it, frankly. In fact, I'm not sure I heard anybody do it on
Yeah. Well,
Fox.
I remember one segment. What's that female Sydney Powell, where
Sidney Powell, right?
she was on Tucker's show and he said, "We've asked you for evidence of your claims and you again are not providing it." And he basically disavowed her. And it made a lot of Trumpians very upset actually when Tucker disavowed her claims. So as far as I'm concerned, he's probably the least responsible, if anyone's responsible for defaming Dominion or for the basis of their suit of any of the other anchors there.
So why would they uh, get rid of him? Was it because perhaps he interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr., who is running
Maybe.
for, uh, because, here we have Bobby Kennedy's son, and he can't get any traction on mainstream media. Nobody will talk to him
Yeah,
except
and
for Tucker.
except for Tucker, and they even decided that the Democratic Party is not going to have any debates. So there won't even be a debate.
I know it's almost like in Soviet days where everything was orchestrated and pre-programmed when the Supreme Soviet or the Presidium or whoever it was, what was going to happen. Interestingly, I might mention this. Uh, Another Zoom group I'm on, it's all financial guys, money managers, and hedge fund guys, and things like that. But they're very well connected, very wired, these guys. And we had uh, Bobby Kennedy on our Zoom call for 90 minutes. And it was before he formally announced. And so I can tell you what my assessment from listening to him talk
Yeah, that's it.
about it. Our the group contains itself, also itself, the uh, the anti COVID money managers. It's how they often describe themselves. I promise you, nobody wears a mask in this group, although they're really smart, powerful guys. Anyway, Kennedy held forth for 90 minutes. I was very favorably impressed with everything he said, but the only thing he was talking about was his was what was going on in the COVID world. So this is just a small segment of Bobby Kennedy. But he did, as he talked about that, uh, talk about the extensive experience that he has suing various government agencies for, environmentalism. That's his other thing, which makes me very suspicious of him. And the fact he still identifies as a Democrat makes me suspicious of him. But having said that, everything that he said to us, which is mostly about the antagonism that he has with the US government and with the whole COVID thing generally, I was favorably impressed. But I don't know what his economic views are. I don't know to what degree he may or may not be a warmonger. I don't know what his tax and spending policies are, anything like that. But he's certainly uh, the best Democrat out there. But since they're not going to have debates, he's not going to have a chance. So it's going to come down to Biden and Biden and Biden. We got to ask ourselves, how stupid are these Democrats? Well, they're not stupid. The Republicans are stupid. We got the stupid party and the evil party. The Democrats, the evil party. So how? But they can't run Biden. I mean, he's already too decrepit, too senile, too stupid, too out of it to carry the flag for the Democrats in 2 years. That won't work. So they must have some kind of a nefarious plan to replace him with somebody else. And but how can Bobby Kennedy throw a spanner in the machinery of the Democratic Party? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the 2024 elections. I mean, we might be living in a full-blown police state, and they have to cancel the elections by that time because of some force majeure. I know that sounds like an insane thing to say, but anything can happen in this world, as scary as it is. And we haven't even had the financial and economic collapse yet. So
Right. Yeah, that's
And
interesting that you say, what you bring up the RFK stuff because that is he did have him on, and I've heard him say he can't get on elsewhere. And with them also cutting off at the same time the debate stage, that certainly, could contribute to this whole thing. But Tucker's also been saying lots of other things, and I think that it seems to me, just an observer of Tucker, and I don't watch him. I didn't watch him every night or anything like that, but I'd watched him fairly regularly. It seemed like he had awakened more to how utterly rotten the whole thing is in the last year or so. Like really more confronting head on some of the COVID hysteria stuff. The fact that all the news anchors, talking heads are essentially financed by Pfizer, et cetera. So that so it confronts that. Talked about the U.S. dollar reserving its losing its reserve currency status. Talked about the fact that the CIA confessed to killing, or basically that they admitted, the killing Kennedy. And that was, or that had come out that they were
and
involved.
and blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, as to
Exactly.
which agency exactly, I mean, we don't know, but, yeah, he was unique. So they there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today, I haven't read it yet, that, says that he was saying nasty things about other, just the headline I read, so I don't know what the article said, and using, naughty language referring to, other
Anti-Semitic stuff, for
oh,
instance.
probably.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's anti-black and anti-gay too. I mean, that's gotta be all tied into it. But it's business idiocy for them to get rid of him, and I've read that his contract continues for another year or 2, and he's getting a gigantic fat salary. So you've got a, you know, it's a rounding error, but still, it's many millions of dollars.
But if you want to remove him from the election cycle, the way to do it is the way that they did it, because basically he cannot do something else if he wants. If he's going to be paid out the rest of his contract, I think he is forced to, you know, like he can't take another job. Let's say if CNN offered him a deal, or if Spotify offered a deal like they did to Rogan, that I don't think he'd be able to do it under the terms of the contract.
And there's nobody else out there that was actually saying the things that he was saying. And one of the things that I liked best about his show, and I think it was unique, where he would a news item of whatever type, uh, all the talking heads on MSNBC and CNN, all of them, all the different shows on those channels, and NBC, ABC, they'd all repeat the same phrase about something, where it's almost like they all the talking heads have been given a script to read. And I like the way that Tucker would go from one to the other, and they're all using the same talking points exactly to the word.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something strange and crazy going on today. And why? Getting back, we talked about this the other day. Would why would Fox pay $750 million to have
Settle.
this lawsuit go away? That was a settlement. Oh, it was
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. You think that, I mean, defamation is hard to prove. It's from what I understand, defamation is very difficult to prove. And so they were, in basically going to trial on it, and they decided to settle for half of the total damages they were seeking, which really opens them up to the next lawsuit from Smartmatic, which is the other voting machine company who, is suing them as well. So it's a strange move on their part.
A lot of strange things going on just generally in this space, tied in with Bobby Kennedy and the fact that Biden's going to run and so forth. I don't understand it, quite frankly, but it's very disturbing. And of course, all in the meanwhile, these people are talking about freedom and democracy. So it's, if you tell a big enough lie, loud enough, long enough, people believe you.
They do. They do. Well, especially if there's not any dissenting voice. And like a lot of people, their response to this, and just like you said, our culture is obsessed with these talking heads, with these media figures. And, even the fact that this is such big news that what happened to Tucker it's a shame and a sham that this has happened, that it's even caused this, but that that the culture is so dominated by these big figures because they really shouldn't matter and don't really matter to real life necessarily. But I think that one of the unique things about Tucker, and I'll just last positive thing I'm gonna say about him anyway with this is that um he was, and people are saying you can go to alternative media like Rumble and things like that. You can still, because these ideas are being said in alternative media. It's not like he's an original on that at all. In fact, he's kind of behind the times compared to the alternative media. And so that's where the criticism from people on that side of things where it comes from. But I think what people don't understand is that there are millions of people who are fixed in watching TV. Like they're not going to go online and get a Rumble account and watch, someone Dan Bongino or whatever there, or Tucker if he were ever to go there. They're not going to. They're going to turn on their TV during prime time, and they're going to watch who's offered to them. And that voice not being there will not be filled by, they will not move platforms. Like they're going to stick with cable. They're going to stick with satellite. They're going to keep watching whoever's on in prime time. And that influence, and Fox talked everybody into going to war in Iraq before. And this is one theory I've heard is that, perhaps they don't want a dissenting voice on the war side of things on there because he was against all of the foreign wars that the US has been involved in lately. And, publicly came out saying he was ashamed for ever endorsing the Iraq war. So, that's my, that's one hypothesis is that maybe it's in advance of more war that they want to make sure the dissenting voice doesn't have that platform.
Tucker was generally pretty sound on just about everything, I think. Generally pretty pro freedom. The only place where he falls down is he seems to have a bee in his bonnet for the so-called fentanyl epidemic, where he's blaming Mexico
Chi-
or
China.
China or something for fentanyl, when actually, first of all, what somebody puts in their body is their business, not the government's business, whether it's marijuana or fentanyl or whatever, number one. Number two, fentanyl is a very, very widely used medical drug. And so if people want to get a hold of it and it makes them feel good, well, this shows that they have a moral failing. It's the same kind of moral failing as somebody that is constantly high on pot or is drunk all the time.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. Fentanyl can kill you. But, if people like Tucker, and like I said, this is where he really falls down, are worried about the health of the white, middle-aged middle class, who are apparently the people that are dying from fentanyl, this is a psychological problem that these people have to deal with. It's not a drug problem. And so far as it's a drug problem, if fentanyl was legalized and you could buy it in your local pharmacy and you know exactly what you're getting and the doses and so forth, addicts, basically opium addicts. But so what? Sigmund Freud was a cocaine addict and he was, whatever faults he had, he was a very productive guy. So fact that somebody's got some bad habits that have to do with some drug, so what? It's none of our business. Certainly
Yeah.
none of the government. Anyway, I don't know what's going on in his mind. Fentanyl and every other drug ought to be legalized.
Yeah.
Solve the drug problem. We wouldn't need the DEA. And just as illegalizing alcohol during the 20s with the prohibition is what created the mafia, that made the mafia. All the profits in selling illegal whiskey and other alcohols. The same thing is this drug problem is created by the U.S. government. And I'm sure that there's a regulatory capture going on with DEA agents, just as there's a regulatory capture that goes on with SEC and Department of Defense and other regulated industries. So it's, anyway, this is
Yeah.
a tangent. We were talking Tucker, but that's the only place I've seen him fall down is
Yeah.
the hobby horse fentanyl.
Yeah. I agree. And he's definitely on the China bad bandwagon. Like it feels like when anytime you refer to China as the Chinese Communist Party, you know, if you always refer to the communist China, it seems like you're almost acting with the talk from a talking point.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. And of course, another little tangent to go off on is that yes, it's the Communist Party of China, and yes, the place is run under tight controls and there's a police state. But quite frankly, if I was going to start a business and I could speak perfect Chinese as well, I might prefer to do that in China with less regulation and lower taxes than we have here in the US. I mean, it's not a communist country. The Chinese Communist Party is just a scam for the guys that are on top to stay on top and
Exactly.
keep control. That's all it is. It's just, oh, they keep control of the state, but they're not communists. I mean, Marx and Lenin would not recognize these guys.
Exactly. That's where where I see some intellectual dishonesty in him that just comes out. But what big question I have though is if this seems like a new trend where corporations, which supposedly exist for the benefit of shareholders by serving their customers, they generate profits. By generating profits, they reward their shareholders. Like that's the way that I was taught to understand the way that free markets work. These businesses, and I say these because I put this in the same category Fox News as really Budweiser, where with Bud Light they did something just to alienate their customers and destroy shareholder value. Seems like that's what Fox has done also. How can they why does this seems to violate a core assumption that we make about the way the world works? How is it a trend? Is this real or is these just out of weird cases, I guess, that we see this?
Yeah, it started in earnest, as far as I can recall, with the Gillette ad when they had a bunch of white guys barbecuing and then went into a
Toxic
political.
masculinity. Toxic
Yeah,
masculinity.
that's what it's about. That's right. And I thought it was so obnoxious that I went out of my way not to buy my typical Gillette razor, and I bought a Bic razor, a 5 blade from Bic. And it actually changed my shaving habits. Now I use the 5 blade because the damn thing lasts for about a year before. I mean, it's incredible. It almost defies the laws of physics that a razor can stay ultra sharp and great for a year. So, but I try to avoid Gillette. But you can't buy anything from any of these corporations because they're all the same, all of them. And of course, why is that? One of the reasons, right down to oil companies and even mining companies now, is that their shares are all owned by ETFs and mutual funds and pension funds, and outfits like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street control all of these big masses of money. So it's not the individual shareholder that has anything to do with it or anything to say about it. It's these big guys. And why do they have a political agenda? Why do they want to transform the US? I mean, is power that important to these guys? They're all billionaires. They have everything they want in life. Hmm. God, who knows? I mean, maybe it goes, for all I know, part of it goes back to their wanting to cut the population of the earth by 90%, which they've said.
Could relate to that. You bring up the BlackRock and State Street thing, and I think it's worth explaining talking about that just for a minute because I see a lot of confusion about it where people look at these big corporations and they go, every company is owned by a handful of companies. So they feel like, like Larry Fink owns everything. And they don't understand, I think, this concept where you talked about that it relates to ETFs. Can you just explain that really quickly so people understand like how why that is the way it is?
Well, today, it seems very few people buy individual stocks. Um, what they do is they buy mutual funds or ETFs or managed money. And these huge conglomerations of money, um, control the shares, not the individual shareholders. Am I being clear? Am I
Yeah,
explaining
I
that?
think so. So, like BlackRock in particular has been incredibly successful. I guess State Street, the second one, at creating these sort of niche, boutique like ETFs that would cater to very specific things. You know, like you could, and that are easy to market, I guess. So when you say, "Hey, you know, I think I should buy some oil," like you don't go and buy Exxon necessarily. Instead, you're more likely to go buy some oil ETF or oil producers ETF. I don't know how many different flavors of oil services and ETFs there are, but I imagine there's a lot of them. I've even heard that there are, I'm not sure it's true, more ETFs than underlying securities.
Yes, I think that's actually a factual statement.
It's crazy. It's crazy to believe that. But they're just
Yeah,
better at they're better at marketing than the companies are, I think.
yeah, it's
And so
ridiculous. And of course, another way for the little guy to get screwed is the ETFs take, one thing and another. Let's say 1% of the value compounded off of all the things they
exactly.
own a year.
Exactly. So essentially what you have, because and it's not done through nefarious means. I don't think that you have a company like BlackRock that has accumulated so much shareholder voting power. Now, how they use that voting power is something else. But I mean, but it's by offering products that investors wanted, even though they're ridiculous and don't serve those customers. But you know that their demand for these ETFs has just skyrocketed. So people have essentially outsourced their investing to BlackRock, and then BlackRock shows up on the share registry as the largest shareholder in all those. But really, it's millions of individual shareholders that make up those pools, pension funds, and so forth. Unfortunately, BlackRock gets to place the vote.
Yes, and it's skimming 1% per year, more or less, all in, of all of this money. And of course, once they recognize that they can control these corporations because they're voting all the little guys' shares out there, they figure, oh, well, let's do something with that too. It's
It's
the
perverse,
kind of capitalism that we have today, which is not capitalism. It's actually fascism, state capitalism, which is fascism. It's Mussolini type capitalism. Um, it seems like that's just another thing that's self-destructing it.
right? And I think so. If what you're saying is true, that it is not capitalism, I think that you have to recognize really the environment you're operating under. Because I think that these things that seem surprising, like Bud Light putting, you know, a man that dresses like a woman on their cans and firing the most popular person, um, you know, a lot of the reason people watch Fox at all, firing him are not done. You know, the rationale defies the basic under motivations that we use to understand the world around us. And it just seems that our basic understanding needs to be updated. Don't you think? I mean,
Oh, I do. And there's just something strange in the air these days. The spirit of the century so far is very weird and polluted. And the trend is still in motion for it to get worse. So, and they're very bold. The fact that, the one guy sticking his head up, Tucker Carlson, has been cut off. Man, this is very interesting.